Well, today's project is this KTM 125 SX two-stroke dirt bike. Now, I've never owned, I've never ridden, or I've never worked on a KTM in my life, so I hope this doesn't suck. But basically, I picked this bike up with no compression. Supposedly a piston ring got caught on the power valve or the edge of the cylinder. Supposedly the cylinder is pretty good shape, but he already pulled the piston out and discarded it. So let's tear this thing apart and see what we need to order. Alright, so we got the top end off, and sure enough, just as I suspected, it needs a crankshaft. That's no good. The bearings actually feel pretty good for the case, but we'll replace those as well. The cylinder head's in pretty decent shape. No real damage there. And the cylinder itself is actually in pretty decent shape. I cannot figure out how to get the power valve out. I got most of the mechanism apart on it, but to get this thing out of here, I have no idea. So that's the next step, and there's a bunch of broken bolts that need to be drilled and tapped out. Well, we got our bottom end kit and also a Pro X piston. I gotta be honest with you, you sometimes feel like a kid in a candy store. Let's go ahead and open it up and see what they gave us. Brandy new gasket kit. Bearings and seals, More seals. A lot of stickers. Sweet. Wrist pin bearing. Crankshaft. And that is it. Gosh, it's too nice. Looks like a perfect match. Ring set. Piston and circlips. And the wrist pin itself. Lightly heat the case to expand it. Drop our new bearing in. Make sure she's going straight. This one goes in without pressing, which is nice. It's nice. When you put these on, you always want to make sure that your connecting rod is between the openings. If you put it on the case here and press it in, you'll actually bend this connecting rod. We'll put a light coat on either side of the gasket. This way we fill in any minor imperfections that may be in the case from us hammering on it with screwdrivers and pliers and, you know, all the crazy things we do. Put a little bit of oil on the surface here. Also going to take our engine oil, 10W40, our 15W40, oil up all these bearings that we cleaned. Just get some juice on all these surfaces. And then on our crankcase side, we can get some two-stroke in our bearing here. I'm going to tighten them in a cross pattern slowly, little by little. I did a nice light hone on the cylinder. The stone hones work much better for this than the ball hones. The ball hones don't tend to, if the cylinder's a little out of round, or the ridge at the top for the ring ridge, a lot of times that won't get that. It just works in between it. So your stone hone is going to be your best bet, just to clean your cylinder up so your rings have something new to bite on. Now, when I was taking this apart, I said I couldn't figure out how to get the power valve apart. Well, apparently this piece goes down inside and twists, but it was so full of carbon, that's why it wouldn't come out. So pretty easy. Got everything cleaned up. We're going to go ahead and put it back together. Now, according to the manual, these side pins need to be tightened until they drag, and then just lightly backed off. I'm going to put our locking collars on as close as we can get to that. The trick to adjusting this exhaust valve properly is on either side of the valve, between the valve and the cylinder, they want you to put shims or a feeler gauge of equal size, and I believe they want like a 0.20 of an inch on either side. And the trick is, once you tighten these pins and back them off the 1/8 of a turn, this valve should not rub against the side of the cylinder at all. It should be totally free. At this point now, we can thread in a bolt into this little guide pin, lube it up with a little bit of 2 strizzy. Now, when you drop this in, you have to drop it in with this lower flat piece parallel to the port, the exhaust port. So it's going to drop in, and you're going to go ahead and turn it so that the groove faces towards the exhaust, or the flat side faces towards the exhaust. And you should be able to lift up and down on the exhaust valve when you get it. You can see the flat side is facing out. Everything works nice and free. Now let's put this actuator together. There are little bearings, inners and outers. I've already got the inners on there, on the 3 pins. And then you'll have 1 actuator and 2 other little ports. Now, if you look at the mechanism here that actually moves all of this stuff, you notice that there's lines here, 1 here, 1 here, and 2 here. That's going to correspond to which valve and which direction it goes. This one goes to the top, and it only has 1, and I don't know, it's very difficult to see. It's got a little dot on there. That's going to line up with that. So we'll just go ahead and drop this one. Let's put some lube on it. Now let's go ahead and drop this one in. We'll just put it straight up. It should spline into the valve. Now, if you turn this, you can actually watch the valve move. Okay. So we'll put that back straight up. This one here has 2 little dots, there and there. That one is going to go on this side to correspond with the 2 dots here. Right now I'm just going to drop them in. I guess we'll just kind of face the 2 dots out. And then this one here has 1 dot on it. She's going to smoke when we start her up. Okay. Now what we want to do is put this on and line all of these up. If we can do it. If we can do it. Once it's in and it's lined up, you can put your top bushings on. and then our retainer plate. Next thing we're going to do is check our ring end gap. It should be fine, but we're going to just check it and make sure 100%. So we want to put it in. We want to get as close to the bottom of the cylinder as we can be. The cylinder generally tapers towards the top, so we want to find out what this is at its tightest point. So if you get it in, and then you can just square it up with the piston. And then go ahead and take a measurement on your ring gap and make sure that that is within manufacturer's specs. Watch out, these clips, man, they'll go into orbit if you're not careful. A little groove down in there inside the piston. You want to make sure that that's seated completely 100%. Now we're only going to put one on because we have to get our wrist pin in. Now you want to check with the manufacturer of your piston, but this particular piston is Pro X. There's an arrow. The arrow is going to face the front of the engine or exhaust side. So what we're going to do right now is just install the piston with no ring. KTM requires that we measure the top of the piston clearance to the top of the cylinder. It gives you a proper compression ratio. So instead of having to deal with the ring back and forth, we'll just go ahead and put the piston on, even just loosely without the clip, to get this measurement. Make it easy to get the cylinder on and off. Don't be shy with the lubrication. She'll probably smoke a little bit, but that's better than smoking the motor. The kit comes with multiple thicknesses on the gasket, so what I'm going to do is just go with the medium one first. We'll put it together and take some measurements, see if we're clear. I'll put some lubrication in the cylinder as well. I'm going to go ahead and just tighten two of the nuts down across from each other. Grab the crankshaft, make sure she's at top dead center. Now to take this measurement, they want a measurement from the top of the piston to this inner land, the distance the piston sits down from this land. So being that this is a 2004, they're calling for 0. So with what we've got in here right now, this is right at 0. It's even with the head, or it's even with the land of the cylinder. So that's going to be our base gasket. We'll take the cylinder back off, put our ring in, put our other circlip in, and then put the cylinder back on. Now let me give you a little tip. This is going to save you, potentially. These little clips, like I said, they go flying. So what happens is you start putting this clip in, she goes right down inside the crankcase, and it's not fun to try to fish that out. So your best bet with this is just to cover your crankcase with a rag. This way, if the clip does fall, it will not fall down inside. Same thing here, make sure she's in the groove. She's got to get into the groove. I think that was a Madonna thing many years ago. For you old heads out there. Now we'll put our ring on. If you look at your ring for this particular model, and most, they're going to have some sort of a mark. This one has a, I don't know, I'm too old to see it, but I see a mark there that it doesn't have on the other side. There's also a pin on your piston, and that needs to line up. So you don't want to spread these too much because you'll snap them. Just start it in the groove and then just kind of work your way around, and she'll fall in. So little two-stroke. Now we can permanently mount our cylinder. The trick is, again, we don't want to break this ring, so we got to kind of squeeze it while we slide it in. And just give her a turn, make sure nothing's binding. Perfect. Now just torque our head down, or I'm sorry, we'll torque our cylinder down. Torque our cylinder down. I need to slow my speech down. Once we get it torqued, we're going to make sure she spins free again. Well, it's hard to turn it. And bring it back to top dead center. And we're going to recheck to make sure that we're good. And that is perfectly flat and level. I like it when a plan comes together. No, no, just stay. Very nice. Take a good look at your reed valve or rad valve. This one has carbon fiber, sometimes they're plastic, they're called reeds. You want to look through, make sure you don't see any light coming through them. If you do, that means they're not sealing properly. It's basically a one-way valve for the fuel and air. It allows air and fuel to go through this way, but not come back. That's it. This engine is now ready to be mounted back in the frame. Well, here it is, all done. Another bike that needed a lot more work than I was expecting. I went ahead and threw some new plastics on it, did the carburetor. Of course, you see top end, bottom end, rebuilt the forks, recovered the seat, rebuilt the front caliper, rear caliper, new brakes, new wheel bearings, just a ton of work on this thing. And there'll be little spin-offs coming up on this. I didn't put everything in this particular video. So if I helped you out or anything, you learned anything from this, or you got any questions or comments, throw them down there. Give me a like, give me a subscribe if you haven't already. I always appreciate you watching. Love your questions, love your comments. Until next time, we got a couple other nice bikes coming up. We got a KX450 locked up, and we got an RMZ 250 locked up. So we're going to break into those and see if we got parts bikes, or we actually got some actual bikes that we can get back on the track. So hit that notification bell if you want to see those videos. Thanks again. See ya.